So Nick, welcome to the Tope Brownlee podcast, and great to have Compass Agency here today as well. You guys have been a great buyers agency for a number of years now. Where do you specialise?
Yes, we specialise in the Tweed Coast. We also work in the Byron-Ballina region, and we've also been focusing on the Gold Coast or Southern Gold Coast more recently.
And of course, how do we know you, mate? Where are you selling with us and working with us?
Made a lot in the Tweed Shire. I feel like we're doing a bit of work together in the Tweed Venora pocket. Obviously, Kingscliff and Casuarina, you guys have got an office there, but seem to be probably most active in that sort of Venora, Tweed, Terranora area.
And you're just down the road from us. Where are you and how long?
Yeah, so Compass is about 3 years old. It's in Cabarita Beach is our office. We've got a team of 5 buyers agents, all slightly different specializations, different experience, but we're kind of pretty active, obviously, with you guys in that area.
And one of the best surf breaks in Australia, mate. Do you get any work done?
Mate, I'm actually not a surfer. The whole team are though, so I'm probably the only one that does do work. But there's a lot of people that obviously love that spot, and we got a lot of clients, even from the local Cabba community that spend time surfing and then might roll out and roll straight into the office for a chat. So
I love it. So a few board meetings out on the paddle, mate.
A few board meetings, yep. We always find our way down there.
And what's your passion, mate? What do you do outside of work?
Yeah, it's a good question. I still really love traveling. So we spend a lot of time traveling. No kids yet. So my wife and I spend, a fair bit of time traveling through Asia, Europe. I used to play professional sport. So my background was a professional athlete for Australia in volleyball, and then moved into the sort of commercial and infrastructure sector, worked on some big projects, and then started buying properties when I was pretty young and started helping friends. And then, still love, what we do every day. It's probably the best job on the planet.
Interesting sport choice too, volleyball. I feel like it's becoming a real passion sport, don't you think?
Yeah, mate, absolutely. I feel like people are really discovering what it is, and obviously beach volleyball got a lot of airtime during the Olympics. Back in 2000, and then indoor volleyball's, it's really started to take off now. There's a lot of people that are pretty passionate about it. I played in Germany professionally for a few seasons and in the States at college, which was, a pretty amazing experience.
So it probably leads in really well, segue for us, because obviously we've got the games in Brisbane in 2032.
Yeah.
How do you feel? Do you feel there's a bit of energy already coming from that? And I guess, of course, you probably have a few mates that are probably going to be lining up in that game maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually from a few different countries. So I've got some guys that I used to play with from New Zealand playing in the beach volleyball. They were a Com Games silver medalist. A couple of guys I used to play with. A few have already played in a few Olympic games. Oh, wow. I was pretty close myself. I was in the Olympic squad for volleyball for London. Unfortunately, we didn't make it. And, so I got a lot of friends that are in that world. I think definitely the energy for the Olympics is palpable now. You can really see and feel the wave of people that are starting to kind of move. Perhaps they've moved already to Brisbane, and now as Brisbane's growing, you're really seeing people starting to push down to the coast. Yeah. About 40% of our clients at the moment are all from Brisbane.
Wow.
A lot of them are
40%.
a lot of them are pushing past the Gold Coast and are kind of coming into northern New South Wales from Kingscliff to Cabba. It's kind of where we're seeing the action.
Wow. So let's break that down a little bit. So 40% interstate, and particularly a decent distance, at least an hour and a half commute.
Yeah.
Are they generally buying for investment, or what are their circumstances?
A lot of investors, still a lot of home buyers, people that are actually buying the future home now, and they might be renting it out, and then they'll plan on, moving down in the next sort of 3, 5, 10 years. So that's been a pretty consistent brief for us. Yeah. So that's a very sort of, that's a brief that's ongoing for us at the moment. We've got kind of multiple people doing that. A lot of investors I'm finding are probably Gold Coast looking in Benora, Tweed. Certainly still Melbourne and Sydney we're getting a lot of inquiry from. Even internationally. We've had 3 international inquiries from the US in the last 2 months. Different sort of briefs. Some are looking for beachfront properties. Some are looking for, $1 million investments and everything in between. So, we're now finding that people have moved to the Gold Coast, discovering Kingscliff on the weekend and, starting to kind of fall in love with it. And we're getting a lot of clients from that.
Well, I know the boys up at Compass, you guys had a few buyers running on that one I had at Carrington Court.
Yep.
And now that you mention it, pre-Middle East, but we had the buyer that had relocated from Dubai and
that's right.
and bought that property in the end. So I know you had some runners on that. And also, interestingly, probably a good segue to work into now with the Middle East.
Yeah.
Look, we both know that through COVID, it was definitely a seller's market. It was off the Richter.
Yep.
Now we're probably sitting somewhere in a bit of a balanced market.
Yeah.
Do you feel with the rate increase, Middle East conflict,
Yeah.
are you feeling the scale starting to tilt towards you guys, towards the buyers, or what?
I'm not sure it's tilting just yet. I think stock's still pretty tight in the areas we're finding, but I think certainly it's starting to change the dynamic just in the last sort of 2 to 4 weeks.
Okay.
But yeah, it's a really good question. I guess time will tell. Because we've got such a sort of span geographically, I'm finding every pocket, every micro pocket's very different. So, Southern Gold Coast, Palm Beach is just insane at the moment. That's still very competitive, multiple offer scenarios, multiple buyer's agent offer scenarios. So you're usually competing against a few different buyer's agents. I think where we're usually working together in Tweed Benora, I feel like there's still still quite a lot of active buyer interest, which is making it, competitive, but there's still great deals to be found. And as we probably know, there's some really good deals both off market, on market if you can strike the right balance with terms, and obviously still at auction. I still find that there's great buying at auction through a lot of agents. Obviously you guys run a great process, and I still feel like there's some good buying.
I appreciate that. And I know you guys are pretty proactive too, and I like the way you guys aren't waiting for the listings to go online. You're not waiting for the cookies to come to you kind of thing. You're out there sourcing it. And I know that you're trying to get buyers engaged and get buyers looking at properties pre-market with us. And I see you at many a photo shoot, Nick, and the boys, which is great. And looking forward to, the future of that as well. And I know that explain the process. Like I love the way you sort of get those buyers and you sort of start nurturing them on the pre-market approach while we're doing photos, or even before that. And, by the time that happens, then there could be some offers coming. Talk us through that. For sure.
Yeah. I mean, the way that we meet clients is really varied at the moment. We're getting a lot of sort of past client referrals and inbound leads from our website or socials. But a lot of the time we have been nurturing buyers that we might meet that might not be ready. Once they do come on board, we're really active on that first week, developing a really specialized property log for them that's based on all their search criteria. Pre-market's obviously amazing, getting first access with you guys, and you're really good at that. That pre and off market database is obviously a really strong one. So a buyer's agent's IP and really our value is holding the keys to a lot of those off market stock with agents and being able to navigate that quickly at the right time. But usually, we've really got to keep ahead of what's coming online. Right, there's big currency in that. If we can show our clients, even 3 or 5 days before things are coming online, usually we're getting first look, and obviously if things line up, we move pretty fast. So it's just about being active, making sure we're across all the stock, and being able to sort of value and talk to stock before anyone else is seeing it.
And I noticed recently we had a buyer in question. It was a top tier buyer.
Yep. Yep.
And I noticed he got very frustrated. He missed out on a few properties with us and also with the competition.
Yep.
And then I believe he appointed your services. Do you want to work us through that and why that's such a pain point for buyers?
Yeah, I think there's still a lot of frustration with buyers, whether they're local buyers that have, known the area, know all the agents, or they're interstate or even international. I think our process, once we do meet someone, we really want to understand, their goals and drivers and what they're looking for. And sort of understand, are we going to be a good fit for them, and vice versa? We're not just going to work with anyone that wants to appoint us. We've got to make sure that we can add value and that ultimately we can deliver value for them. Usually people that are missing out at auction, people that are kind of, still looking for the right thing, and they might be quite particular. They might have, big budgets, small budgets. Once we start that process, we're usually refining pretty quickly, even before we've met them. Before we've started working with them. To really find out, what's important to them and how we can help.
And I know we can't kiss and tell, mate, but I know you recently even got appointed by a local real estate agent to help them find a property. Do you mind just sharing a general story about that?
Yeah, we've actually helped a couple of real estate agents.
Have you?
We have.
Oh, one?
Yeah. No, I can't kiss and tell, but there are a few. There's a couple, in and around the area. There's a couple of interstate real estate agents that are looking for something in the area. I think for them, they know that even though they might be active in the market, they're not getting access to all the stock, and having someone independently represent them to make sure that, we can really run to ground opportunities and make sure that, they're not getting fed the B grade stock. It's actually worked out really well. We've bought 2 properties in the last 3 months for real estate agents locally, both off market, both exclusive. So it's kind of a perfect opportunity for us.
I know you get judged, and I
Yep.
even said to the kids when they were out looking to please don't mention my name and all the rest of it, because as you know, it right or wrong, there comes some judgment.
For sure, mate. I think you guys do a great job. I think you run your own race, your own process. I think you clearly, you get some great results. You've got great market share. And I think at the moment what we're seeing is that there's a lot of people that want a full value service. So they want to be able to sell with you and list with you, and obviously then go into the rental market with you. And so having that end-to-end service, for me, that's what I'm seeing is kind of, the peaking buyer's interest. If what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, we're pushing over 500 investors too. So I think when buyers, sellers, the whole gamut, the service, it plays so well together. So you're right, definitely on the end-to-end service from sale through to property management, but also too, when that property goes to market, there's an investor database that obviously comes straight to market that they can also tap into as well. So the appetite for a lot of our investors, probably no dissimilar to a lot of the investors you represent, often can buy 2, 3, 4, even 5 plus properties. So I think that's important. I think the other thing is too, obviously we're a very auction savvy company, being an auctioneer myself and having sold in the auction space for close to 15 years now. You guys are quite active in that space. Do you want to talk me through how you represent clients? Sometimes I believe you act on a per service product.
Yeah.
You do a lot of different things.
Yeah, we do. We've got a pretty broad range at the moment. So we can help someone, for auction only, auction bidding. We'll do an evaluate, negotiate service, which is really focused in on at least 1 to 3 properties, making sure that, clients that are looking at something, it might be online, they may have come across it through a friend, they just want to make sure that they're not missing anything. I think the biggest value for a lot of buyers at the moment is just making sure they're not making costly mistakes. For a team that buys 100 properties a year on average, we've got a fair bit of experience now at understanding local market nuances, construction, building code, understanding council, all of those areas do add a lot of value to a lot of people. We've saved clients hundreds of thousands of dollars in costly mistakes, that they could have made. Yeah. And I think at the moment, the biggest thing that we're seeing is that we do get approached for a really broad range of scope. Some buyers might need a hand. Even vendor advocacy has become quite a big thing for us. So the vendor advocacy space is quite big in Melbourne and Sydney. I'm from Melbourne originally, and what that is, and we're doing one at the moment in Rainbow Bay. Basically, there's certain vendors out there who don't necessarily want to run the process themselves with an agent. They want someone to sit in the middle, manage the communications, manage that process of finding the right agent for their property and really helping them nail that campaign. And so we're doing that quite a bit. And honestly, it's been an amazing experience because you get to see the other side. You get to work with some of the best agents in the country. We're working with some of the biggest agencies in Australia. We're currently working with. That's okay, mate. I think the vendor advocacy space is something that is going to grow. Obviously, it's got to be for the right property and the right client. But there's some clients that might be traveling overseas. They might be based interstate. And so we can add a lot of value for them just being on the ground and making sure that we're kind of really vetting that process. And obviously the full service for buyers agents is really the name of the game. So, on average, each of our team at any one point in time, we sort of cap our client base based on number of briefs. We might be running, 4, 5, 6 briefs each. We never have conflicts in our client base. We never want to have a scenario where, 2 buyers are looking for the same thing. But yeah, so that's probably a pretty good summary of kind of what we do. How do you find buyers agents to work with, and what's been your experience generally?
It's been an interesting one. It started off, I guess, as a bit of an unknown, and how's this going to interact and what the role is. I think the naivety of, and I'm sure you'd agree, having run it now for a period of time, is that the one-man band operations, they all think they want to run this buyer's agency, and then they find out there's a lot of work and it's actually a business. And I think also they think somehow that by representing the buyer, they're trying to get a deal. But the deal is, I think, just as much as working as a team is to get the job done, as much as to, obviously you work for the buyer, I work for the seller, but it's definitely, I find, much more collaborative approach. I think sometimes buyer agents still don't understand that. And it is relationship, because as we know, we've got to work together. You got to,
Yeah.
you know, work with your buyer. Sometimes they've got to come up a little bit. Sometimes I've got to have conversations with the seller about conditions and other spaces to try and bridge the gap and put a deal together.
Yeah. What's been your experience, or what's been, I guess, the best buyer's agent style that you've worked with? Like, what have you found that's been quite effective in the way that you guys operate for other buyer's agents working with you?
With auction, it's been really good because I think it's just so transparent. You know, you're representing that buyer. Obviously, we're representing the seller. We bring it all together and see how it goes, you know, on the night. And that, I find that's really clean. The challenge, of course, with the buyer's agent is that, you know, like every buyer, you never know for certain if that buyer is going to be successful, even once an offer's accepted. And what you can't stop in New South Wales is another offer coming in prior that had already been through the property with a higher offer after an acceptance. And so I find that's always probably the most difficult. And I'm sure you guys probably sit with bated breath, are we going to be successful or not? And I think that's where the buyer's agents really shine, though, like the quality ones, because they understand the urgency. They understand I think sometimes the buyer, and I always have to explain this to a buyer, you know, like, you know, the shoe's on the other foot now. Once we've got an acceptance, all the pressure is on you guys, because if you don't exchange, we're on the market.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, and I noticed that unless you give them that feedback, you know, they're slow with a deposit. They're slow with an exchange. I'm sure you'd agree. Tell us some stories where the solicitors slow you down and you have to kind of work them through it.
Yeah, we've got some amazing solicitors that we work with and that we're pretty dialed in with now. But you're absolutely right. You know, there's risk everywhere through the transaction. I think the big thing that I'm certainly seeing in the buyer's agent space, and certainly even working with different selling agents, is the ability to kind of work together and be in sync. You know, we might speak to a solicitor 5, 6, 7 times a day if it's like, you know, due to exchange in 24 hours. So there's a lot of experience and, you know, that comes with working quickly, and I think that's obviously a big part of what we do. But mate, we've had experiences across the board, from, you know, being gazumped, you know, still missing out, to certain experiences in, you know, the acreage market, which is really challenging. You know, you find out stuff through the due diligence process that, you know, you could never have known through just a couple of visual inspections. But I would say, you know, most of the time we're pretty good. Once we're engaged and we're locked in an offer process, we're pretty good at navigating the outcome. I think, you know, our team's a really interesting mix of people. You know, we've got guys like Lee that have worked in high-end residential sales for, you know, 20 years, selling luxury real estate from $10-20 million plus. We've got guys that have, you know, bought property young, grew up in the area, ex-professional triathlete, now has done, you know, 50 transactions plus in the last 18 months. Chris has obviously got a lot of experience both as a selling agent in Coolangatta and that area, and being a buyer's agent in Europe and in Australia. And my background, you know, we've navigated very complex projects from, you know, pre-development, construction and maintenance in, you know, $50, $150 million projects that are pretty complex. So I feel like we understand that world and how to move quickly.
Do you think too, though, in your space, you must be good at vetting the buyers and I guess qualifying, because I mean, I meet buyers every day and honestly, like, you go through the list, no, yes. How does it look like for you?
I feel like you have to be pretty good at vetting. I feel like that's a big part of the skill set of a buyer's agent. And, you know, when we meet buyers every day, you get pretty good at realizing, you know, are they going to be good to work with? Are they legitimate? But mate, it still happens. We still get, you know, clients that call you that are really just fishing for information, and that's all part of the process. But I feel like the strength of a good buyer's agent now is not just signing clients, but is really, you know, truly understanding what they're looking for and what's going to be critical, so that when you are running and you're running hard, at the end of the day, our clients are a reflection of us, right? So I'm always mindful of that when we're dealing with agents. Ultimately, their ability to make decisions quickly, ask the right questions, and transact efficiently is really a representation of us. So yeah, I think we are getting certainly better at it, and it is a core part of the business to be able to vet and understand buyers, really test their readiness, you know, and really ask them a lot of questions up front. So we spend a fair bit of time in our, you know, pre-onboarding phase, getting to know them and kind of running them through a pretty detailed step process to make sure we're on the same page.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So obviously we've covered down the buyer side of it. Yep. So let's hypothetical here. I'm a buyer.
Yep.
I want to buy on the Tweed Coast.
Yep.
what's exciting coming up? What would you recommend? I've got a budget between, let's say, 1 to 2 investor from your Brisbane corridor.
Yeah.
They're far away, mate. What's going on?
Mate, there's still some really exciting pockets I find, like, but I don't think anything's really hidden anymore. I think when, when we first started working in the area, even parts of Cabarita, parts of Hastings and Pottsville were probably pretty well still unknown by a lot of people, but the amount that those markets have grown is just astronomical. We've just bought a house in Cabarita, several million. Yeah, thank you. Several million for clients, originally from Melbourne that had no idea about Cabarita. They were drawn to the Gold Coast, moved down, fell in love with it. I think there's still really good value buying in Pottsville. I can't believe that you can buy 4-bed, 2-bath houses, sub 2 million, that close to the beach. It's a beautiful town. It's great lifestyle and amenities. We've helped a number of buyers buy in Pottsville. It's been a huge growth area for us. I'm still a big fan of probably your core markets, Tweed and Benora. I just think for a family lifestyle, proximity, north and south, and just value, it's still exceptional for an investor. And I think that's where a lot of our Melbourne, Sydney and Brisbane investors are looking at the moment.
Yeah. And what's more important, yield, position? What are they looking for?
I think it's always a balance at this stage. A lot of the clients I'm personally working with are looking for, a strong fundamental capital growth with value add potential. So they're still looking for opportunity to add value. I feel like the very hands-off investors that are just looking for, move in, tenants straight in, they're going to have to pay a little bit more in this current market. And the best opportunities are usually found, with a little bit of work to do. Something we've started looking into as well with some of our clients due to our local networks and, builders and people that can really come in and get that work done quickly. We've started being able to assess that during the due diligence phase to kind of see what work we might be able to help them with before they get tenants in. And there's some huge upside there. We recently got interviewed by, it was a really interesting process to share with you, but effectively it was a wealth creation project management firm out of Sydney, pretty high end, and they interviewed 5 buyers agents across the coast from, the biggest, largest buyers agents in Australia that have an office on the Gold Coast down to a one-man band that effectively was still transacting a bit. And we were successful on the basis that they were looking for that right mix of, enough of a team that was still boutique and that was really client-centric. But they are purely looking in Tweed Heads West and Benora based on a huge amount of ABS data and growth data that they're focused on. So it's really interesting to see the back end of that, data analytics that goes into why certain suburbs are going to perform better than others over time. So that's my view. What's yours?
Yeah, good question. Tweed Coast is a special market in the Tweed Shire. Yields are powerful. Views are always exciting. But I think people do get caught in the lifestyle, and I think it's interesting. As much as someone comes in with a pretense with investment, as we know, wives control the decision making on just about everything, including family homes and investments. And I think they also look at that resaleability. If I don't love it, then maybe I can't necessarily transfer it to someone else. And I find it's interesting, that still has a lot of pull and the purchase power. Yeah,
for sure. I think probably the sentiment that we're seeing now from people in terms of like moving within the Tweed area is people are starting to kind of push down a bit further south. So we've actually had some people looking at pockets, near Clothiers Creek and Nundry and those sort of acreage lifestyle pockets. To me, that's probably been the biggest shift in buyer sentiment that I've seen in the last couple of months. It really happened last year, but even with everything going on in the Middle East and kind of, I guess, global uncertainty, people looking for a little bit more space, maybe growing their own veggies and having their own garden. So that's been a huge growth area. I've just signed a couple of people in the last 24 hours looking for acreage in that around that 2 million mark. It's still very desirable.
So it might be another COVID switch mentality kind of
potentially, yeah. I think people are, they're just sort of looking at, how do I future-proof, I guess their lifestyle and what they're looking for. But, still obviously a lot of people that love the coastline and love the beach. What are you guys, I guess, what are you seeing at the moment in terms of buyer sentiment? I mean, you probably deal with as many buyers as anyone.
It's interesting. Like we just sold one. It's interesting what you said because we just sold a property to an investor in Moolumbar.
Yeah.
That sort of surprised me. Yield was good, value there,
Yeah.
and obviously growth. So they're much more open-minded, like you're saying, to outlier areas.
Yeah.
So we're definitely seeing that. I feel that at the end of the day, people are relocating. People have got a lot of movement coming up to the Northern Rivers.
Yeah.
So that hasn't changed.
Yeah.
Work, a lot of them are trades. There's a lot of different spread of buyers in the market. So I think, the show goes on, as they say.
Yeah.
The density and the volume of new stock hitting the market, that's the first thing that gets impacted when people get a bit nervous. So there's already a volume of buyers in the market, right? Now we've got people getting nervous about putting their properties on the market. So short term, all you see is more pressure on existing stock, which I feel only keeps things going. If we look at the last interest rate hike in 2008, all we saw was the prices going up off the back of the first couple of interest rates. And I think that was the reason why.
Yeah.
And then the volume of property on the market over-engineered, obviously the buyer inquiry level, and then that switched the whole game plan. But will we see that this time? I'm not convinced. And I think the population acceleration's at full speed.
Yeah. Where do you see the majority of buyers coming from for your core markets? Are they still local? Are they still interstate? Like what's the sort of rough percentages from what you guys are seeing?
I think the Victorian market's still in a bit of a state of flux with all their crazy taxes and, a bit of uncertainty there. Sydney market's definitely, I feel, softened a little bit. So that slows down a little bit of that migration short term. But you know what? We've got enough going on, like you mentioned before, Gold Coast and Queensland. Brisbane's very strong city. Prices are still really strong.
Yeah.
And I find that every time you seem to think, another outlier area like Sydney is affected. That might impact us. It's being made up from another market like Brisbane or suddenly WA fires or I think there's a lot more strength overall in the Australian economy than relying now on one pocket. I don't know. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think so too. I think it's it's such a lifestyle area. I'm originally from Melbourne. I know you are too. There's nowhere else like it in Australia. I've travelled a lot. I'm sure you have. I think long term we're going to continue to see migration from all across Australia and the world. New Zealand's been an interesting one for us. We're starting to see some New Zealand buyers moving out to live, not just invest, which has been really interesting. We had a couple of clients from New Zealand last year. So that's been an interesting one that I'm seeing more of that than I probably would have expected. But generally, mate, it's probably now Gold Coast, people that are priced out of the Gold Coast coming in, and it's people still from Brisbane. Those two would probably represent 60% of our clients at the moment.
But isn't that an interesting market? It was a strong economy, financially secure, well run.
Yeah.
I felt they did better through COVID than we did, and yet somehow the government still managed to stuff it up. Like that's a basket case at the moment if I've ever seen an economy. So I wonder how that translates for us because we do have historically a massive migration arm from NZ coming into Australia as well.
Yeah, I think Australia's still a very safe place, and it's still a place that despite everything else going on in the world, I personally wouldn't want to be anywhere else. I think there's a lot of people that are probably going to return home. I think expats are a huge part of the inquiry. Two of our inquiries in the last two or 3 days, I think, were from people that are going to be relocating home. One from the Middle East, one from the US. It's just accelerated their plans. So the fact that people that may or may not have been caused straight away by what's happened in the Middle East, but I feel like just with that level of uncertainty now, people are going. It's almost a flight to safety mentality. In the share market, where's the safe place? Where do I know that we're isolated and we're away from everyone else? I feel like, mate, fundamentals are really strong. I think the Tweed market's going to continue to perform really well. I think it's still pockets are still undervalued compared to others that I'm looking at as a potential investment opportunity. And I think the amount of strength in the rental market's just insane. Like I'm looking at some of the numbers that you guys are achieving or others are achieving, and it's just remarkable to see almost a 1-for-1 ratio on houses in Benora and Terranora buying at 1.3 and getting 1,200 to 1,300 a week. It's pretty remarkable. So
it's incredible.
Long term, it's going to do really well. And, you know, I think we're in a really good place to have that focus here, as are you guys.
Yeah, when you look at the yields in Sydney at 2 and 3% by comparison, and we're pushing 5+, it's incredible, isn't it?
Yeah, it's pretty insane. I think probably the big driver that we've seen in the last few months has just been a slight resurgence in that prestige market. You know, some of the buyers we've had even just in the last week, looking at beachfront again in Casuarina, it's been a little bit soft in terms of sales. And, you know, obviously the really luxury acreage market in Byron at that 10 to 15 million place, we've had a few buyers in that world looking at a couple of different properties in the last few months. And to me, the fact that, you know, those markets have had a pretty significant correction, but there's still great buying opportunities there for good properties. It's going to be interesting to see what happens this year from my view.
And I guess last but not least, you know, you guys have done a great job over the last 3 years. How do buyers get a hold of you, and how does that all work?
Yeah, it's pretty easy, really. You can reach out to any of us, usually through the website. There's an inquiry link. You can just submit a pretty simple inquiry. We'll get back to you usually within the hour. And basically we'll start with a really easy, you know, discovery call just to understand a bit more about what you're looking for, budget, timing, your goals, you know, what else is going on in your life. We'll get an understanding of really what you're looking for, and then we'll move a bit further into the process. But it's a very easy conversation. You know, we're just really looking to understand if we can add value. We've usually got a fairly good handle on, you know, what you're looking to buy. We might have looked at most of the properties that buyers have inspected if they're pretty active in the market. So, it's pretty straightforward on our website. Just head to compassagency.com.au and we can start the conversation.
I always learn a lot talking to the buyers agents, and you guys are one of the best. I really appreciate it. Mate, you guys do a good job, and at Tate Brownlee Real Estate, we open the doors to your future.
Beautiful. Thanks very much for having me, mate. Appreciate your time.
Pleasure.
Awesome.
How was that for time?
Is that 30 minutes?
Yeah.
Holy shit.